Okay, this is Samantha, and yeah, this is looking good. You've got the nice kind of detail at the top of the windows here, which looks good, and the doorway as well. We've got the window things here, shutters, I guess. Um, yeah, so this came together nicely. I think overall it looks a little tall and skinny to me, so I might just take the whole thing, or at least all of these things, and group those. Whoops. Control G. Scale that down a little bit. I think that looks a little better to me, a little closer. And I think I might scale this in a little bit. I'm just holding down R and left mouse clicking. I'll switch to world so I can just scale it in that way. And just because it was really wide from side to side. Although I guess it's overall maybe could be a bit bigger, maybe a little flatter actually. Anyway, so you could play with the proportions a little bit. I think these guys maybe are a little taller. I can see it overlaps this little intersection here, so you can make that. But these are just little details. Really, it's looking good. It looks like you've got it nicely organized in here. Oh, that's from the group I just made. But yeah, good work on this. Next up is Herminia, and overall I think this looks good. I'm not sure why you left this guy in here, but yeah, I like these little details like these boards at the base. I think some of this is really good where you can see that the window pane separators are set back from the rest of the window frame, and each of these individual thing comes out. So I like that kind of attention to detail on the windows. And you've done some stuff on the door frame here. Might have gone about that a little differently. Like for these, I'm just going to shift double click, and then I can shift right mouse click extrude face, and just put that in the center. Kind of scale that in, and then extrude again, shift right mouse click extrude, and push it back a little bit, something like that, to get that, but that's alright. Yeah, and that frame looks good, so I like these little details as well. Those turned out pretty good. So proportions looking good. So yeah, nice work on this. Next up is Jared. Looks like I got errors when I tried to open it in 2015, so I'm opening it in 2018. I recommend using Maya 2015 with Service Pack 6 for this class, because it's just that's what it was recorded in, and so things go a little smoother if you do. Overall, I think this is looking pretty good. I think there's a few proportions issues, like these look awfully thick, especially at the base there compared to these, and the bench looks very tall with very long legs, and this is much more kind of squat and short and scaled down a bit. You could add this kind of cutout here with the ramp if you want. It's kind of a nice touch, and the door is okay, but I think the bottom half of the door, or I should say the bottom third here, is solid, where you have the whole thing filled with glass panes, and it would also go a little narrower with these pane separators here, and same up here, and I think these are 4x2, and you've got 5x2, so I might make those a little smaller, and fewer panes. So just some, and you could also, it looks like there's a door and a window in the side here, so that's some detail you could add as well. But you've got the basic idea there. You've got some good pieces, so reasonably clean model overall. If we look at the outliner, there's a lot of stuff in here. So if you want to just say edit, delete all by type history, that'll get rid of the history on the surfaces, and then I'll select all the surfaces, Control G to group them, and that'll clean up the scene for me so that there's not all those nodes spread out. So yeah, decent work. I think some more attention to kind of matching the image would be good, but overall some decent basic work there. Next up is Christopher, and yeah, this is looking pretty good. You've got a lot of the different pieces in there. One thing I would pay attention to is the the thickness of these, window panes here. The window pane separators are quite thick compared to the image, so I might take these, for example, and narrow those down a whole bunch. And maybe take all these and kind of scale that up to narrow the outside ones. So I might kind of take a look at that compared to that one, and then compare this one to how thick that is. So see how that's much too thick there. So that's something to work on. I think for this, I would be more inclined to use a cylinder rather than a sphere. I'm just going to select both of these and isolate them with this button, and just to make things a little easier. And I'm going to hold down E and click and make sure discrete rotates on, and just to make that rotate real straight. And then I'll hold down V for point step and middle mouse drag to get it to the center of this sphere about. And then let's just flatten this just to help me line it up, and like so, something like that. And then, so now that it's lined up, I'll get rid of that one, and I'll go in the channel box for this, and increase the subdivision. Whoa, it doesn't, it doesn't like to increase the subdivisions after you scale it for some reason. I don't know why that is. It's kind of a glitch in my opinion. Let's flatten that some. I can get rid of that sphere. So I've got that, and then to get that ridge on the front, let me just isolate this again to make it easier to see. I'll select the faces of this, but I just want the front faces, so I'm just going to look at it from the side and hold down Control to deselect those. Whoops, I think I got the wrong side. There we go. Better. Okay. And then I'll extrude. I just like using Shift, right mouse click, extrude face. Then I'll click this to get that centered. Click that to scale, and just scale in a little bit from the edge. And then I'll select this, Shift, double click to get the whole loop, Shift, right mouse click, extrude face, pull that out a bit. And then I can delete off the bottom half of this, so, or more. So right mouse click face. Might have to delete more than that, but you kind of get the idea. You can go and delete out more of those if you need, but I think that gets kind of a better shape for that piece than just putting a sphere on there. I like you have details like the chair and the bucket thing going on. That's good. So overall pretty good work. It'd be nice if these were kind of more rounded as a shape. You could, well, it's going to be difficult to smooth this because it doesn't have the it might mess it up with the edges, but what you might try actually that should work is if we grab these 1, 2, 3, Shift, right mouse click, where is bevel edge? Right here, bevel edge, and then go into the bevel and we'll increase the segments, and maybe adjust the fraction, make that a little bigger, and that's going to work better for that, to get those kind of rounded shapes there, which that more looks like. So yeah, and I think also that this would be, these are a lot thinner. I know you're not able to see that from the top, but I can't imagine them being that thick, so I would thin those out a little bit. So yeah, overall some good work, and I think getting into some of the details and improving them could take this thing further. Okay, next up is Faith. You mentioned about problem watching the tutorial videos on the website. For those issues, if you could please contact Help Desk, um, and they can help you troubleshoot, see what's going on, see if they can help. Um, this is looking pretty good. I think it looks like I can tell you used the measure tool because that thing got left behind, but that's good you used that. So these are nicely evenly placed in there, and the stairs and all that, and that's good. I think maybe these got a little too close together. I know they kind of look close because of the angle of the wall there, but I think there's a little more space there. I would move that forward. Because I imagine it maybe even being like halfway between. Um, Oops. I know I didn't move the hole, but once you look at it from that angle, it looks like they're sort of close together, but there's that gap in between, so I think it's actually much more forward like that. You can actually move this too, like so. Um, and yeah, the columns are just much too thick. I think that's the biggest thing I'm noticing. Let's see what it looks like if we scale these down. I'll use this green one here to keep the height, but just get them a lot thinner. And I think that already looks a bunch better. There's some additional detail here you could put in, like these little extra pieces there, which would help those columns out a bit. I think the proportions are pretty good. I think you paid some nice attention to that. So that's really good. There's other little details you could add, like these little boards coming out. But overall, I think you did a nice job. Next up is Anthony, and yeah, I think overall you've got this basically looking pretty good. The first thing that really jumps out at me is just how extremely thick and just big the curves are on these shapes when these are much more kind of closer to a cylinder. So for that, I would scale, and I'll use this green thing here and really thin those out quite a bit. I think that looks much better, like so. There's a couple parts that got a little too thin here, but that's alright. But if you wanted to like take something like this and right mouse click, face, select this, shift double click, and then I can kind of scale that in a bit. And if there's any other parts that are sticking out too far, or if I wanted to take like this edge here, whoops, this one here, and scale that out so it's not so skinny, can do that, and that looks a lot closer to me to that. And actually I might have gone too far now. I might have made it too skinny, but you get the idea. They were too thick before. I think these shapes are looking pretty good. It's open to interpretation what those are because they're sort of dark and in shadow. Good, you got this bit on top. I mean, to me, this little assemblage at the top takes up, I don't know, a significant portion of the space on top, maybe 3/5 or something like that. Whereas this is just right here, this little thing in the middle. So overall, I think this thing needs to. Let's group it first. Control G, and center the pivot. Modify center pivot. And then scale that, bigger. I think that's a little bit better. Maybe it could be a little taller too. Up arrow to select the group. I might move I'll just scale it up a bit and then move it up. Yeah, maybe I need to select the vertices. I'll go into component mode and just scooch those up. Oops. Clean that up a little bit. I think that's a little better. When you see, like, I don't know if you guys can see that, but see that kind of weird flickery strangeness on here? That usually says to me, oh, there's two surfaces on top of each other. So you want to avoid that. So you've got a few surfaces on top of each other. So I'll just pick one and then just hold down shift and do a marquee select, and that should be theirs. I'll delete it, and now I don't get that flickering. So anytime you see that, they call it an artifact. And so I'm also wondering about this side here, if that's that same thing. No, that's probably something else. It probably has to do with the, the topology of the surface and the Boolean kind of weirdness. And that's where, let's just isolate this. I'm going to hit isolate selected. And yeah, I can see there's some strangeness going on with the, see how it's sort of like missing this edge here? I think that, yeah, that's what's going on. That's kind of difficult to repair at this point. We could try, give it a shot. Mesh tools, multi-cut tool, and I might start like going from this corner to that corner and hit enter. Yeah, I'm not surprised we got that. And then I might try to go from here to here, enter. See, it doesn't want to do that. It's having a bit of a hard time. It's just Boolean doesn't create really good surfaces. See, it's not wanting to fix that. So for me, I would just redo the wall, because I think you're going to have a hard time, repairing that existing one. So maybe take out this whole wall. And I could build a new one from this edge. Select the edge, shift right mouse click, extrude edge, pull that up, and then, oops, let's use this. Change it so it just definitely goes straight up. And then this time when I cut holes in it, oh, what are the, I think that, let me undo that. I think there's still these kind of faces here on the side, so I might kind of take those out first too, just so we don't have that. Just holding down Control and Shift to add to selection here. Yeah, there's just, it's kind of messy. Almost want to delete the whole thing and redo it. Actually, that's probably what I would do. Just to get a clean version of it, take a cube and then hold down D and V and middle mouse drag to snap the pivot point to the corner, and then hold down V and middle mouse drag to snap that to this corner, and then let's scale this till it matches that way, and then this way, oops, and then this way, and then shift, delete that, and then I might use the multi-cut tool again. So mesh tools, multi-cut tool, and if I hold down shift and control at the same time, it'll put a cut right in the middle there, and then I can take this edge, move that up to the top. Okay, obviously you can clean that up later, and then I'll again use the multi-cut tool and hold down. Let's make sure we're in object mode here. Mesh tools, multi-cut tool. Here we go. I'm holding down Control, and I'll just put an edge at the edge of each of these windows. And that should be going, it's doing an edge loop, so it's going all the way around the surface, which means I'll have done both sides at the same time. And then similarly do the hold down Control here for the top and bottom, and then I can select these faces and then delete, and oh, okay, so maybe a little adjustment here. Just select the edge, double click. Hey, come on buddy, why is it not selecting? the edge loop. It just must be because of the holes. It doesn't see it as continuous. So we just go to the right view, and I'll select this, and then just hold down to control to deselect that, and deselect that. W for move. Move these down a bit. Fix that. Okay. So that gives me a much cleaner surface. I think you just need to, you'll just want to even these out to get those all the same height. Like so. And then maybe I think I need to take these two edges and just those need to move up a bit. Like so. And so that's how I'd, instead of using Boolean, that's how I'd get a nice clean surface. Maybe right mouse click, assign existing material. It's nicely labeled in walls, so then I can get that there. So that looks much better, and it solves that weird problem you were having before. Although that intersects a little bit, maybe that needs to be pulled out some. Yeah. There we go. Okay. But yeah, overall, good work on this. Next up is Connor. I got an error when I opened this in Maya 2015, so I opened up in Maya 2018. I recommend using Maya 2015 Service Pack 6. It's very important that you update it to Service Pack 6 for this class, so that we're all using the same version, of the tutorials. Everything goes much smoother, a lot less errors and issues and stuff like that. So yeah, overall this is looking pretty good. I like that you put these cross beams in here. I think it could have been a little taller and skinnier proportion-wise when I look at this distance there. And yeah, I mean, look at how this roof comes down. And I think I went over this in the last critique, some of these issues on the proportions, so you might want to refer back to that one. I think I also pointed out these little stairs was more like ladder-like than these steps, so yeah, maybe refer back to that. But yeah, besides that, it's looking pretty good. And I mean, there was some opportunity to add some of these sacks and those kinds of things, other objects. You do have a barrel. For the barrel, you could, if you still have this history on, you could add a couple subdivisions in height, and then you can take these and double-click, shift, double-click, scale outward, and you can get a little bit more of a barrel shape that way. But yeah, good basic shapes. I think you could have done more detail and got a little closer proportions. But otherwise, looks decent. I haven't been looking at everybody's outliner, but it's really the same thing for everybody, which is that you can do delete the history, edit, delete all by type, history. Then you can select all your surfaces, Control G for group, and then you can delete all the other stuff, and then name this group, and you have a nice, neat outliner. Okay, next up is Shaka, and yeah, this is looking pretty good. I think you could pay attention to some of the spacing and sizes of things. Like, look how this window is sort of crowding this door here, whereas here you've got like a decent sized gap between those and a little more room on the side. Maybe scale these down and spread things out a bit. Otherwise looking pretty good. I might have gone a little smaller on this window because you see it, like here's the top of the door, and there's a line with the top of the window, so that's a little bit more below and probably smaller. For these guys, yeah, that looks pretty good. I think you could have done this a little more rounded. If you use a bevel, if I right mouse click, shift select the edge, like I might have done it where I'm going to take out these. You sort of did like a manual bevel, it's what it looks like, but I was going to show you how, well, I'll just do it on one. Shift right mouse click, bevel, edge is right here, and then you've got some settings in the channel box in that bevel where you can increase the segments, and you can adjust the fraction, which is like the size of it, so you can get like that kind of nice round shape where you have those sharper corners. So rather than manually putting in all these edges, if you just had sort of a kind of a stair step thing, you could put in a few bevels and get nice round shapes. So yeah, overall looking pretty good. I think a few little attention adjustments to size and spacing would really help this out. Next up is Henri, and yeah, this is looking really great. Excellent work. All kinds of nice detail. I mean, just this water tower alone with all the individual boards. Look at that, and the little stairs here. Just great work. And look at all the detail on these. The barrels even have the bands on it, although I don't actually see any barrels there, but that's okay. It's nice you wanted to add some additional things. A nice looking chair and these columns and the window panes. Yeah, and like the fact that you did all the individual boards here, it's impressive. So I think this is really good work. Yeah, look, he even did the staircase in the back there, and did these kind of extra embellishment. Maybe went a little too far on the door there, but still, it's just good work. And these pieces look nice as well. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff going on here. You know, you did that guy, and the window panes look pretty good. You'll notice they're a bit thicker. That center one is a little thicker, and then there's, you know, each half is then split then again, so you could have added more pane separators, so a thicker one in the center and then a thin one here and a thin one here, like you see in those. So that might have gotten a little closer, but that's a pretty fine detail, and overall you've done a lot of good extra detail in a pretty complex building, so great job on this. Next up is Tara, and yeah, it looks like you had some issues here with a Boolean, and Boolean is just not a great tool. It doesn't produce very good surfaces, so I can see where you're struggling with that. I think, you know, independent of that, you know, this is overall looking decent. You've got all the basic pieces in there. You know, you did the top here. I think this could have been like lower a bit, you know, height wise, and then more of these little bars here. But you know, I was demonstrating before with the multi-cut tool how you could use that instead for cutting out holes. And for a door, you know, one thing I can show as a way of doing a door. I'll just do a quick example with a cube. So I've just created a cube, and I'm gonna go into the inputs and increase the subdivisions height. Oops, not the height, just subdivisions height, and the subdivisions width. Yeah, to 2 and 2 there. And then after I've done that, I'll get it shaped more like a door. I'm just trying to look at this door. It's so dark, it's hard to see what's going on. But you can put in some additional details. So if I grab these faces just as an example, and you can split this up differently. Like if you wanted to, if I did a mesh tools multi-cut tool and I hold down the control key, I can put another split, let's say up here, because I see that sort of top section here. And I can even have like a little bar in between. And so then maybe I take like these faces, and I can do shift right mouse click extrude face, and see if I scale them in now, they sort of scale together, but I want to scale separately. So if I do control right mouse click, isn't it control right mouse click? I'm sorry, getting used to my 2018 control. Sorry, control shift right mouse click toggle keep faces together. And so now when I scale these in, see how they scale in individually versus as a kind of as a group? And then shift right mouse click, extrude face again, and I can like push these in some, for example, and scale them down a bit. Might have gone too far. And then extrude again, scale it down, and extrude face again, and like pull these out. Maybe scale that down a touch. So that's where you can get those kind of. That's an approach to get some of those door details that you may be looking for on there. I can then maybe take this and scale it in a little bit, narrow that down. Yeah, I don't really like that. That's probably pretty good. So that's an approach to doing those door details. That can be good. And and I showed earlier the Boolean thing where instead of using a Boolean to cut a window like you're doing, if you have, and I showed this in another video, so if you watch the whole thing you'll see it again, but if you just use the multi-cut tool again, mesh tools, multi-cut tool, you can hold down control and kind of add these edge loops. Let's just say there's a window here or something like that. I know I did that very messy, but then select that and delete it, and you get a nice clean surface, which all quads, that is to say all four-sided faces, which works well. So that works better than doing Boolean, which kind of makes a messy surface and gets some of the errors that you were running into. Next up is Terrence, and it's looking good for the most part. Some issues with cutting out these things, and like I just showed in the last video, I would just say stay away from Boolean for the most part. I'll just show that again. I'm going to make a cube, and I can kind of match it to the position of this. I'll hold down D and V and middle mouse drag to get that to the corner. This is just to help me line things up. And let's shift select these two things and isolate them with this button here. And then I'll move this cube to hold down V for point snap and middle mouse drag and get that to this corner. Then I'll just go ahead and scale this up and get that to match that side and the height. And this distance here. Maybe a touch back. Oh, and that's all one big surface, huh? Well, which means I lose that stuff, but it's kind of a mess up there anyways. So I'm going to unisolate everything else. And then first I'll use the multi-cut tool, mesh tools, multi-cut tool. I'm going to hold down control and shift, and it'll kind of snap this to the middle when I add this loop. And then I can right mouse click edge, select this edge, move this up to fill that in there. And yeah, I might do that as a separate thing. Ooh, this got a little crazy here as well. Not sure what went on there, but I might just take that out because that looks kind of problematic. Oh yeah, and these guys got weird too. All of those. I wonder, did you just duplicate those? So yeah, if you want to cut holes in this, the way we do it is with the multi-cut tool. So again, mesh tools, multi-cut tool, and hold control, and we can, anywhere that we need to, might help to look at this. Nope. Yeah, like this view where we can see through everything. I'm just holding down control and clicking anywhere I need a line for these various windows and doors. And then if you want to take any of those out, you can just select that face and delete it. Or in this case, a couple faces, So I think that that's an approach that gets you a more sound surface than what you had. Yeah, and you have these weird shapes all over the place. So clean those up. So it looks a little bit better. But that's what I like better. Oh, and then you need this new facade, but I would just make that a separate cube. I would just put a new cube that's the front facade rather than trying to build that as a whole thing. And then the top piece here, I would do as a cylinder, and rotate that forward. I have discrete rotate on. If I hold down E and click, I get this marking menu, and I can turn on discrete rotate, which does 15-degree increments. And let's just center it to the top center of this roof to make sure that's centered, and then scale this a little bit bigger, and let's make sure there's, before I start changing the proportions, just smooth this out by adding some more divisions, and then maybe flatten it a little bit, or something like that. And let's get this nice and thin, and then select the front faces. So I'll select all the faces, but then I'll hold down Control and deselect. Oops. Let's try that again. Okay, so now I have just the front faces. Shift, right mouse click, extrude face. Click this little blue thing, scale it to the center, and then right mouse click face, select this, shift double click to go all the way around, shift right mouse click, extrude face, pull this forward, and then I might delete out the bottom half of this. Right mouse click face, something like that, for that top piece, and then just another cube for that facade on the front of it. So those are some fixes you could make, and I think you have some other pieces to add back in. So yeah, overall it's got a lot of good stuff going on, but I think your booleans were kind of messing some of that stuff up, and I think there was those weird window frame things going on too, which maybe was really the main problem. Okay.